Good evening. I'd like to call the Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District for April 13th, 2015 to order. Everybody please rise for an invocation and a moment of silence for the firefighters that died the month of March, and followed by the pledge.
We'd ask for prayer for the families of those who've lost one, and also one of the firemen here in Bonita, John Coots, lost his father today, so remember him. Dear God, we thank you for this day that you've blessed us with. We thank you for life that you give us. Lord, I pray that you'll be with the families of those who've lost loved ones that have served as firemen across this nation. I pray that you will give them comfort and peace during this time of loss. Also with our fireman Kuntz, I pray that you will be with him and let him know that there are those who care. And Lord, just comfort him in this time of loss. Thank you for our nation. Thank you for our freedom and the ability we have to meet and to share together. Pray that you might watch over our firemen and give them protection as they serve to help others here in this city. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business, approval of the regular board minutes from March 9th, 2015.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I have a question about some amendments.
We need a second before we can talk about them? Okay. You have some discussion?
Yes, on page 3.
Excuse me, sir. Can you?
Yes, sir. On page 3. First of all, if you go under Deputy Chief Giuliano's minutes here, his report, the word on the first sentence where it says ran, if we change that to responded by. And Bonita Springs Fire District, would we change that to Bonita Springs Fire and Control? Bonita Springs Fire Rescue and Control District. Proper name, Control and Rescue District. Down at the bottom where Commissioner Murphy expressed his appreciation to the firefighters, I'd also like to add that to, I meant to say, and EMS responders. On the page 4, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, Deborah McLean, her name should be spelled MacLean.
Duly noted. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We need one motion for the financials, the March 2015 and current expenditures, the acknowledgement of March 2015 financial report, and the acknowledgement of wire transfers and transfers between accounts.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Annual service pins up next. Chief.
Yes, sir. And we would like to recognize Mrs. Cheryl Call for her 15 years of service. I would like to say Cheryl has been a dedicated employee to this district, has worked tirelessly to advance our mission, and she's been a wonderful asset, and we're glad to have her. And 15 years of service is a long time, and wanted to let you know, Cheryl, that we greatly appreciate your service. If you wanted to come up front. Also, hold on one second. Don't be embarrassed. I'd also like to recognize Jeff Krupp. You in the crowd, Jeff? You here?
No.
He's not here, but I did want to mention that Jeff Krupp is another outstanding employee, serving 10 years as a fire inspector. He also does our plans reviews and is an outstanding employee as well, dedicated to our mission. And he's not here, but just wanted to say that about Jeff as well. So thank you both.
Congratulations from the board.
Has anyone met our new photographer, Assistant Chief DeWitt?
About time he does something.
Next item is Citrus Park give back.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to read this certificate of appreciation for Citrus Park. Holds a softball game that the department, the district, and also Local 3444 have been involved with for quite a few years. I'm sure President Brown will have something to say about that later. But this is a certificate up from the district. The Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District hereby recognizes Citrus Park community for the generous donation raised during a 7th annual Give Back Day softball game tournament on March 7th, 2015. All proceeds to the benefit of Bonita Springs Fire Rescue Employee Appreciation Banquet and related projects. Thank you kindly for your support. And I would like to say that Citrus Park has been an outstanding example of a close-knit community within our larger community here in Bonita Springs, and we certainly appreciate everything that they do for us, and we're glad to be of service to the members of Citrus Park as well. Mr. Mike Sayin is here to, as the Citrus Park Treasurer, is here to accept this reward on behalf of Citrus Park.
Not being prepared for this, I just want to say that I hope this continues for many years to come, and you don't understand, and maybe you do, the umbrella of security that you people provide for our small retirement area is immeasurable, and we thank you very, very much. This is just a small portion of our appreciation, and we hope this continues. Thank you.
Thank you. They could go a little easier on our softball team, but.
That concludes our presentation, sir.
Thank you. Next item is old business. Commissioner McCourt.
I have a question, if I may.
Absolutely.
Regarding our meeting on March 24th, I understand the nature of the meeting. We don't publish the minutes to that meeting. But I'm questioning, I think we should publish the minutes to the open portion of that meeting to verify the fact that there was, in fact, a meeting.
Yeah,
That's a good
sir,
point.
Does that make sense?
That's
Yes,
a very
sir,
good point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Old business? We'll move on to new business. Yes, sir. Commissioner Murphy.
Yes, I would wish to ask for consensus approval to attend the Bonita Springs Leadership, sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce. It would be less than $2,000 for a one-year training program.
I have no problem.
Commissioner
I
Forbes?
have no problem, sir.
I'm fine with that. Commissioner McCourt?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. I appreciate you doing it. It's a lot of work. We don't need a motion for that. That's just a consensus item, right? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Consensus.
Any further new business? Well, then we'll move on to the chief's report. Chief Joe Daigle.
Yes, sir. I just have two minor items. The executive session that Commissioner McCourt was talking about, there's been some questions about the release of those minutes, and I believe you covered it, sir. But those will be released when the entire proceedings are over with, and our attorney, Maggie Mooney, advises us that that is appropriate for us to release those minutes to the public. Additionally, the new truck is here, and we're just waiting. We have a truck out on repair right now. Once we figure out, there's got to be some jostling around of equipment to put that into service, and when that is done, we'll inform the board when that takes place. So, and those are the only two items that I have. Assistant Chief DeWitt, I believe, is going to, next up, he's going to speak about the fire that we had in Pelican Landing.
Good evening. As soon as we get it up on the screen over here, what I'm going to talk about is a little bit about the fire we had the other day at Pelican Landing. It's been in the media, and so it's a little hot topic, so we thought we'd bring it up. Normally, like we talked about, when Deputy Chief Giuliano goes over a fire, it's usually from the month past, but we're going to do a little bit different this month because this was such a hot topic. So as you see there, the first picture you see is as we got on scene, myself and Deputy Chief Scott and the two safety officers arrived on scene. This is from what we would call the Bravo Charlie corner, the BC side of it in this corner. This is what we've seen, and at this point we had nobody inside. We decided to do a defensive attack just because of the nature of this fire, the type of roof that it was. As we can see here, this is a barrel tile roof. Very heavy, very hot fire, because there's usually no place for it to self-ventilate. When it self-ventilates, it's already burned through most of the trusses and all the plywood. Here's a picture of our ladder truck. We got it up to do an aerial defensive attack. This was squirting down on top of the fire to get it out, so none of our firefighters had to go into harm's way. This is on the back porch, or the back Charlie side. As you see, and I don't know this for a fact because the occupants did get out of the house safely and went to the next door. They were taken to a hospital just for observation purposes, but their shutters were halfway down, so I don't know if they were in the process of leaving and packing things up, but this is the way we found the shutters in the back. One of them was completely down, and these two were halfway. Again, at this point, the fire hadn't burned all the way to the back, and we're just trying to make a stop through the attic that we can make access to. Again, and this is a little bit later into it. We are inside the structure at this time, but as you can see up top, up in here, it's very light. There is no roof on it. On the house. This is from that same angle. This is that back porch as you see the sliders. And our ladder truck, again, still spraying water down on it. And just another angle of it. As you see there, it's a little hard to see on your view, but this truck right here, this is our actual ladder truck, truck 25. We had two of Estero's trucks there, ladder 42 and ladder 49, assisting us, along with three of our apparatus. This is another viewpoint that you see. It's our ladder, not theirs. This is the front of the garage, or the Alpha structure. This is the street side. Inside there, again, a little hard to see because these pictures are a little dark, but inside here you got two vehicles, and this is where we believe the origin of the fire started. On one car, caught the next car on fire, then went up into the attic, and again, because of the nature of that ceiling and that roof, it just made it a lot harder. And I'll just put a little side note here. I think it was 3 months ago we had the fire over on McKenna. Basically the same type of fire. We got there a little bit quicker. This was about a 7-minute response time. McKenna was about a 4-minute response time. They're in the process right now of renovating and gutting that one. Shingle roof, single car. So a little bit different, but same fire start or fire origin. So I just want to make note of that. Again, here's some of Estero's crews in there. Again, this is the back lanai. You see no roof on the back. We see the tile roof with the plywood. And again, make a note that this was with, as Deputy Chief Giuliano and I spoke about it, and Deputy Chief Scott, this is what we'd call real plywood, not that OSB. This is actual nice plywood, probably 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch plywood, so it wasn't like a cookie cutter house, a low grade house that had this stuff on it. This was a well-built structure. Just showing you a little bit of the command staff. Like I said, it was myself, Deputy Chief Scott, Battalion Chief Brown. This is EMS's South Medcom and our safety officer for just a regular fire, and this is across the street from it. This one right here, I wanted to make note of this. Even with all that fire you've seen in that first page, on that first slide, and there's going to be a subsequent video at the end, like a little 30-second video. We still managed, we busted out this window here and put in a line in here, and we managed to save a lot of the contents in this room, which was some old pictures, old memorabilia. You really can't see it, but right here in the top of this, there was boxes of photos that says memories 78 to 92 and stuff like that. So we were able to save a lot of that, and I believe that the homeowners were very grateful for that. This is some of the memorabilia that was in the household that we were able to save. Harlem Globetrotter basketball, some other memorabilia here, but means something to the family. This is the front entranceway of it. This is the only thing really left of the structure of the roof, is this front little cupola area over the actual entryway. And it wasn't attached. It's not part of the common area, but it just because of the radiant heat, we still didn't let anybody go underneath there. And I think this is my video. Anyway, I apologize for that. It played on my computer, but now it's on a thumb drive. What this video would show you, and we may be able to email it out to you, basically what it shows you is as this fire progresses, this whole roof area just collapses like dominoes that fall down there. It just keeps moving further and further back and collapses. And when it does collapse, you'll see flames pop out these little corner areas right here. So that's all I have.
I wanted to add something to this. We had a similar we had many structure fires similar to this one. One, we'll talk about Deputy Chief Giuliano's fire one time. We had 2 crews inside trying to locate a fire one time in a very similar building. And Deputy Chief Giuliano was the battalion chief at the time in charge. And he recognized the fact that we couldn't find fire anywhere at the time. And they started poking holes in the ceiling, and they saw flames in the attic. Within 2 minutes, he called a Mayday, I believe, a red alert or Mayday, and got everybody out of the building. As the last crew left, I think it was a minute and a half, 2 minutes, something like that, the entire roof caved in, and there would have been 2 or 3 crews, I believe, that would have been dead, if not seriously injured, had the officer not understood the mechanism of danger in these type of situations. So,
Any other questions?
Assistant Chief, will we ever know the cause, the start of this fire? Is it still under investigation? And if we will know, when will we know?
We will know. We should know. Let me rephrase that. We should know. It is under investigation by the State Fire Marshal's Office. If it is cut and dry, like the one that we had on Tarpon Way, that's still under investigation. But the one under McKenna was deemed to be started by the vehicle, had a recall on the vehicle. So they will look at these vehicles and see if there's a recall on it and see if they had any work done on it, and at that point they'll be able to make the determination what caused it. But from witnesses that we got on scene, it was, they said the first car started on fire, started the second car on fire, then got into the attic, and that's when it ran.
And that first car was a Cadillac?
Allegedly. They got the VIN number. We never did get the VIN number to see what it was, but yeah, that's what they had told us, that they believed it was a
Fire
Cadillac.
Marshal's report.
Yes, it will be in that. And usually they try and get it out within 30 days. 30 to 45 days is their goal, unless there's something suspicious, it has to be sent off to the lab or something like that. But on this one, it seems to be pretty cut and dry by the witness statements.
Thank you.
Well, I was on the fairway when that fire happened on that golf course, and I can tell you that it was a brick oven. That heat from that fire, even on the other side of the fairway, was incredible. And the fact that no other structures or any of that foliage around that property was amazing, because that was as hot a fire as you could ask for. I mean, there was no, I just described it as a brick oven. I mean, it was unbelievably hot. Even on the far side of the fairway, you could feel the heat from it.
Mm-hmm. And one note, I mean, the call came out at about 11:30, I think it was, Deputy Chief Scott. We left here, the chief and I left here, and actually the battalion chief who's on today was with us. We were all out here having a meeting, talking about manning and some upcoming training. And the call came out, and when we went over the East Terry overpass, we could see the column of smoke from here. So it had been going a while before we got the call. Go ahead, sir.
Was there any way to tell, were these cars hot? In other words, had they just come into the garage?
Yes,
or were
they had.
there for a long period of time?
That's going to be something that, because we never spoke to the actual owners of the cars, because they were evacuated next door, then EMS took care of them, and for precautionary reasons, they took their.
I mean,
took
they
them to
weren't
hospital.
like antiques?
No. They were both fairly new cars. Like I said, I believe one was a Cadillac and the other one was either a crossover SUV or a van of some sort. So,
And I think I heard you mention that the Tarpon fire, which is still under investigation,
Correct.
Was also started by a car?
No, the McKenna fire. The one on McKenna, it was back in November, December, something like that. November,
okay.
December, it was a older model Ford that had a recall on the cruise control module that had started that fire. Or it started the car fire, which in turn started the house fire.
One thing I did want to mention is, we're not assuming that, we are assuming that's a car fire, but the investigation, I was on scene the next day in the evening, and the state investigator was on scene, and he is not saying at this point that it was a car fire, and he had some potential other reasons that the fire could have started, so wouldn't like to assume
Right.
that that's the case without the investigation coming back.
Right, we gotta let the investigation play out to see exactly what it is, but they try and get that out typically in 30 to 45 days. Any other questions? Thank you.
Deputy Chief Giuliano.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to talk about brush fires today. Brush fires season starting to heat up, although we had a rain today, and I looked at the forecast. We may have some more rain coming, and if with any luck, we'll be in our afternoon rainy season. But we've had several brush fires recently, both in and out of Bonita and Charlotte and Hendry counties. In the past, we've had pretty large brush fires here, and there's a brush fire from East Bonita, down Bonita Beach Road looking east. That's a pretty big fire. I don't remember what year that was, Chief? That was your fire.
Yeah, actually, that was, I want to say 2007, because that was the first fire I was ever incident commander on, that large.
Yeah. So I always like to show that picture because that looks pretty angry there. Here's another picture of our engine 24, which is in Golden Gate, and this was, I believe, 2007 or 2008, actually. This was an urban interface fire. Urban interface is when you have houses built among trees, kind of like our San Carlos estates. You got to be real careful with that. And this is our engine 24 at the time. This is a spectacular picture. I kind of like what you do in that situation is you got to protect the homes from the fire. The fire gets going pretty fast. As you can imagine, they'll back them trucks up into the front yard or wherever they can. They'll pull a hose out, and they'll fight the fire, and the fire will go around the homes. The guys put their backs to the house and their face to the fire. Even at that, a lot of homes get lost that way. I forgot. Do you remember how many we lost that day? Richie was there?
No, Chief Brown he was the commander on this truck.
Were you?
It was close to a dozen.
A dozen homes got lost that day. A lot of people think brush fires are nothing, but they're a lot. Okay, a few weeks ago, there was a 20-acre brush fire here in Bonita. That's probably the biggest one we've seen so far this year. We've had a lot of small ones. On that fire, we had two of our brush trucks. We had a Sterl's brush truck and a dozer from Division of Forestry. This weekend, we saw large fires in Glades County, and we had brush trucks from Lee County responding there. We had sent task forces as far away as Flagler County in the past. I myself was up in NIMS, which is up in that area. We're going to talk about strike teams and task forces. Managing large-scale events like hurricanes and brush fires, and even some of the big multi-alarm fires we get here, it requires teamwork and coordination among multiple agencies. The reason for this is that's the reason we cross-train so much with the fire districts in our county. We spend a lot of time training, and so we're all on the same page with the same countywide SOGs and SOPs, and we've developed a military-like system that we use to work with each other. Lee County, throughout the Fire Chiefs Association, has organized the fire districts into north and south teams of both fire engines and brush trucks. We use these in large-scale emergencies where local resources have been overwhelmed. The terms that we use are the task force and strike teams. When a first due officer on an apparatus deems a team is necessary, they'll call through Lee Control and request a team of either a strike team of brush trucks or a strike team of engines, or maybe they'll ask for a task force, which is 3 brush trucks and 2 engines. What this does, it saves time, and everyone's already organized. This is a whole countywide organization. To this end, we have this form we send out every month, This is our South Strike Team Task Force Call Down List, we call it. It lists the different fire departments, the numbers to call for the contact people, who they are, and what apparatus and individuals you'll be sending to if they're called out. You'll see some notes on the bottom there. It tells where the staging areas are and the communication plans. You can see, for instance, in Lee County, if you want to talk to Division of Forestry, it's going to be on the red channel for the VHF. If you want to talk to Charlotte County, if you're over there, you got to go to 800 TAC 1, or they got Lee Charlotte 800 megahertz, or the blue channel. So anyway, all this stuff is technical, but this is stuff that has to be done beforehand, so when we get there, we know what's going on. Along with the strike team or task force, we have an IMT team. This is an incident management team. And what this is, generally chief officers in the county, and they're all set up on a rotation. There's dozens and dozens of them. There's 5 pages of, this is the roster. And along the top, you'll see their qualifications and what you need. You've got IMT leaders, air command, you got plans, operations, and safety officers, PIOs, staging managers, logistics, things like that. The team is a forward or a full team. The forward team is just an IMT leader, a division supervisor, and a safety officer. And they're automatically sent out whenever you request a strike team. And the full team has got like 10 guys on it. And they'll come out and they'll manage the incident. This is when your local resources have been depleted to the point where you can't handle them. So you'll call out for this IMT team. They'll come out and they'll handle your incident for you. A lot of people think these teams are used for complicated, multifaceted emergencies. To the uninformed, they may seem like a lot of resources and maybe even overkill. But in these scenes with dozens or even hundreds of firefighters and apparatus, sometimes including aircraft, buses, boats, all on one emergency scene, this type of organization becomes crucial for the safety of our firefighters. Teams such as this are standard and are used throughout the country to better provide the needed resources during extreme emergency situations. So as I said, in Lee County here, we have it pretty well organized. It's like a military structure. So when it gets bad real quick, we know what to do. Our teams are all organized and our leaders are all organized. I haven't even talked about our USAR team, Urban Search and Rescue team here in Lee County, that we have also that we can use, and we do use. I'll maybe talk about that another day. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Chief Scott.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just have a couple things. Last month, I talked to you all about the pediatric delivery system, and I just wanted to update everyone. We started that training last month. We're continuing this month. We're almost complete, and it has been received very well. So we're excited about putting that in service probably by the end of the month or maybe the middle of May. The other thing that we've been working on and training on through most of the month is what we have up on the board here. It's the Lee County Pit Crew model. And it's a little bit of a different philosophy on how we treat cardiac arrest calls. We spend a pretty good amount of resources and time training for these. They are one of our priority calls, but we run so many of them, and they truly do make a difference of life or death. So the reason where the pit crew came from is really from NASCAR. And there's a specific job and a specific position. And although we run these calls all the time, we're always striving to get better at them. So this is a county-wide initiative, and we have been training with Lee County EMS on this. So we've been going to EOC to train with their units, and now they have started training down here at this station. So we've been sharing the training with their FTOs and their leadership, and the crews have been working together. Although we run these calls together, it still is very beneficial to train that way. So if you look up here, the reason we put this on the board is the positions, not only are their jobs outlined, but again, just like NASCAR with a pit crew, their positions. So, Oh, yeah. So anyway, the idea here is the first rescuer that comes in, he has a positions himself or herself on the right side of the patient, and they stay and remain there with the equipment they need. And then the second comes in and they establish the AED or the cardiac monitor. The third takes airway. And many of you have seen these before and you've seen the demonstrations. The fourth person comes in, they're the code commander, and they run the entire call. They do the IV, the IO, and all the medications. And then we have a resus officer that comes in to somewhat oversee the scene. Again, this may seem a little redundant. You've seen these presentations here that we do, but watching us train, and especially with the other crews, we have, again, it's been very well received. I think it's going to make us better at these calls. I think it's going to flow better than it did before. And again, it's a step in the right direction. And even though, again, we run these calls with them, it's almost just like our co-op or what Deputy Chief Giuliano was just talking about with the brush fires. If we don't train together when we get on scene of these very critical priority calls, sometimes they don't go as good as they could. So we're just about finished up with this as well. So some of the things, some of the equipment we're changing, and our approach to these calls is slightly different than it was before. So that's about all I have. Any questions on this at all? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item up is Commissioner's Business.
I don't have any.
Commissioner Forbes?
Yeah, I was going to report something that went on our March Florida Association for Spatial Districts that happened up in Tallahassee. And it's actually, the only reason I'm bringing this up, almost everybody in this room is a voter, either in Bonita or in Lee County or maybe a few outside the county. And we were at a conference, and the luncheon speaker was a state representative, Pasadena, and she was presenting different bills that were in front of the state House of Representatives and the Senate that would be acted upon in this term. And one of them was a bill. It was a two-part bill. One part, Part A, was to allow people to register through the computer from home online. And the other one was to move spatial districts to where they would the only election date that would be available to them would be on the primary election day. And I know there was a number of comments from those in attendance. In fact, I think Steve was asking a lot of questions, I think Ms. Murphy, and I know our table was much more negative than positive, and someone asked her if what was the probability that this bill would survive, and she said 100% because she was sponsoring it, and I think she said Senator Richter was also behind it in the Senate. But it was a bill that was requested by the various Board of Election Supervisors. And after the meeting was over with, we had time to talk about it because it was nothing that was going to come up in front of the fire board that we would vote on. It would be fire district business or anything like that. And I know I wrote up a letter outlining the problems with the bill, taking great pains to compliment her for her good legislative work, as well as what the disadvantages were of moving this election to primary. And the big thing on that was that if you move a nonpartisan election to a date when all the primary elections are, typically those people that show up are registered from both parties. Nonpartisans never usually vote at a primary election day because there's nothing on the ballot for them to vote on. Then the second thing is, if you happen to strike a primary where the dominant party, and that varies across the state of Florida. If you go down around Miami-Dade County, the primary party in power would be the Democratic Party. Up in Lee and Collier, it would probably be the Republican Party. But if you hit one of those deals where there is no candidates from the minority party on the primary, there's only one election that's not contested, and what the major people that would turn out would be people from the dominant party, and they would be what I would call politically active in the party, which is the opposite of what a nonpartisan election is supposed to be all about. And so I crafted a letter up and had it sent to Representative Pasadoma, Hudson, Caldwell, also Senator Benaquisto, Senator Richter, and Pasadoma. And then Steve, and he can explain what he did, he was newly appointed to the legislative committee of the Florida Association for Special Districts, and he did a yeoman's job. And then the chief did some work behind the scenes with our lawyer or attorney in Tallahassee, who's also a liaison with the representatives and the senators as well. And the short of it is that the power of the pen still works, because that bill that was 100% going through was withdrawn. And actually it benefits everybody, and that was something that we did, I think, that actually benefited all the voters from not only just our district, but also the whole county, the whole state, really. But Steve can tell you what he did as part of it.
Well, FASD, the Florida Association of Special Districts, is exactly that. It represents all the special districts that join this organization, and there are hundreds of them. And as a result of that, they hire lobbyists and attorneys, and they work with the legislatures, and they pick and choose issues that are a problem for FASD. I was appointed to the legislative committee last month, and after our luncheon at the Governor's Club and the meeting that we had that evening, I met with the chairman of the legislative committee, and I had actually met earlier in the evening with the attorneys, and at that early in the day, the attorneys did not want to, they didn't feel it was an issue that they wanted to take up, because they didn't think that there was, that much support for squashing the bill. And within that 24-hour period, it went from not being on anybody's radar to we did an emergency meeting over the phone, and subsequently the FASD attorneys took it up and got the bill squashed. And like Fred said, they said it was 100% going to go through. So I think belonging to the association, and I'm honored to be part of the legislative committee, I think if we hadn't have been there and we hadn't have paid attention to that, I think a bill that was not good for anybody would have been pushed through. So.
Mr. Chairman, I wish to thank you and Commissioner Forbes for your outstanding efforts in doing what's right for the public interest.
Thank you, sir. It's our pleasure. Pat, do you have anything this evening?
Is it for me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, let me explain where I'm coming from, because I've spent a lot of my career reading annual reports. So naturally, when I get your annual report, I'm perhaps a little critical, or I want to look at it very carefully. This, I assume, was put together because, the end of last year, the current 2014 report?
That was put together at the beginning of this year.
Okay, but it published when? And how was it distributed?
Last month, we put it on the website.
Okay, all right. So is this something that the board has some input into putting together, or is this something staff puts together? What?
The staff puts it together, but of course, we take, considerations from the board.
So it's reviewed by the board then before it goes out?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So come next year, we'll have a chance to make some comments?
Yes, sir. I think.
Okay.
I think.
Well, I did have one question that I thought was kind of interesting. It came from a constituent, actually. But in reading our mission statement, typically an annual report tries very hard to put themselves in the best possible light they can, in addition to the numbers, to give you a feel of what management is doing and where it's headed and the motivations and so forth, and also the board of directors, which is what we're going to be, or I'm going to be doing. And I read this, as I said, it was pointed out to me, so I went back and reread it again. But it talks about our core values, and it mentions that we have an obligation to our residents, we have an obligation to our district, we have an obligation to each other, and we have an obligation to ourselves, which seems to be in a reasonable order. The other side of the page then is our focus and our goals. And the first of the goals is that all personnel and staff do their best to enjoy their job. Is that a little out of order in your mind? It kind of jumps out at me as saying, this is your most important goal, that everybody enjoy their job. It just kind of hits you like, what's going on here? Secondly then is develop or improve the organization to manage our resources. Thirdly then is develop and improve the system to minimize the impact of fires. The fourth one is provide an efficient emergency emergency medical response. And lastly, to provide efficient fire prevention. Now, as I pointed out to you the last time we went into this, when you get to these back pages, it shows that 75% of what we do is medical responses. And yet, that was the fourth item on the list. But I think the one that jumps out at you first is, when you look at the goal, the first goal is that everybody should enjoy their job. And you say that our on the other side of the page, you say that our first interest is in our residents. That doesn't quite balance in my mind. And I think, all I'm saying is I think this could be said much better and in a little better order to make the point that we are interested in what the important points of our job are, which are we recognize that we do mostly emergency medical responses, and secondary, at least in terms of numbers, are fires. And I certainly think when we publish our goals, that ought to be reflected. So I hope that next year when we publish this thing, we'll have some input and have a chance to chat about this before it gets into print.
Thank you. Anybody have anything else? You got anything? Public input. I didn't get any cards, but anybody'd like to say anything? Now would be the time. Seeing none? Oh.
I don't have any public input, but I did get the video working if you guys would like to see it, if it's up to you.
Sure.
Your pleasure.
Sideways.
You're laying down taking the video?
We could stand there.
It's a little stretched out, but as you see here, it does start to go. What I want to make a note of is this is about 10 minutes into the fire, or 10 minutes after we arrived is when this starts to occur. So that's why it's so important to recognize what the fire is doing, fire behavior, and the training that we do out here in these in the simulators that we have here, so we recognize what the fire behavior is going to go through. And it should be coming any second here. The back half of it's going to just start falling. And you'll see, like I said before, the around the eaves where that black spots are on the wall, they'll puff out fire at that point. And you see we're hitting it and we're doing our job. There it comes right here. And as Commissioner Lohan said, there was those shrubs you see around on both sides of it. We protected all those and the houses that are on both sides of it. So there was no other damage. Everything was contained to this structure in that area.
That impressed me immensely because that fire was so hot. I don't know how everything else around it didn't burn.
Thank you, that's all I have. I apologize again for the quality of the
thank you.
video.
Well, meeting adjourned. Thank you for coming.